Anastasiya Shapochkina is a Russia specialist and the president of the think tank Eastern Circle. She joins me now for more. Just how much influence do you think can the European Union have really faced with Russia?
European Union is negotiating from a weak point in this situation. Already, where bilateral talk with President Biden and President Putin, President Biden had consulted with the European allies before, which on the surface reinforces the position of the West. However, it also erases Europe from the negotiations entirely. Negotiations about Ukraine, where France and Germany are part of the Normandy format and have positioned themselves as mediators in the conflict, nevertheless, are disappearing now in this new configuration, which had been very much desired and achieved by Russia, which is more or less a Cold War configuration where two great powers, the US and Russia, which wants to project itself as a great power, negotiate about the fate of Europe among each other. In terms of leverage that Europe has, of course, there is, for example, Nord Stream 2. And that is the red line for Europe, which Europe is not ready to cross because the most powerful state in Europe, Germany, has personal and financial and geostrategic stake in this project, a project which is very dear to the Kremlin, however, which has not been on the table. The sanctions, including in the energy sector, have not, for example, ever stricken gas exports to the European Union, whereas Russia is responsible for about 30% of the gas imports to the EU, because any sanctions that Europe could take against Russia are going to be shooting Europe itself in the foot, given the amount of business interests and the foreign policy interests of major European states.
What about Russia here? What's Vladimir Putin's goal?
Vladimir Putin's goal was to precisely do what he has achieved to do, to sit at the negotiation table over the fate of Ukraine and potentially other issues directly with the great power to which he, the Cold War man, has been accustomed, the United States. For Vladimir Putin, the leaders of Germany and France are not on the same level as himself. The only leader who is on the same level is the US leader and potentially a Chinese leader, but none of the others. And this is why the reaching of this point when not only a dialogue with the US is possible, but a dialogue has started. This is a second meeting between Biden and Putin. The first took place physically in Geneva in the summer. And next one has already been announced for 2022. And the US stated that this is going to become kind of a regular exchange between leaders, which is exactly what Russia had wanted to achieve. On the vis-a-vis Europe and vis-a-vis the West in general, Russia wanted to send a strong signal that Ukraine is a priority, which has always been for Russia, foreign policy priority, while it is not a foreign policy priority for the majority of Western states, with the exceptions of Poland or Lithuania, for example, who do not have the military capacity to have Ukraine. And thus, Russia is ready to go further. And bullying in this way had as an objective, of course, to prevent the West to react, to give a strong reaction, to do anything against Russia strongly before Russia advances any further. This bullying was supposed to be sufficient in itself, and it was sufficient in itself. We heard that on sanctions now, the discourse is there are going to be sanctions if Russia attacks Ukraine. Well, there have already been sanctions with the previous Russian incursion in Ukraine since 2014. Shall we understand that today's position is actually a step backwards compared to what we have seen already so far? And of course, if in the mind of the Kremlin never has been an attack, but rather bullying, then this acknowledgement of the US, by the way, the acknowledgement of President Biden publicly in press conference on December 11th, that the US is not ready to introduce its troops to fight in Ukraine is already as another objective for Vladimir Putin to really know that Ukraine is there in front of him and nobody's going to come to its rescue, militarily speaking.
Anastasiya, thank you so much for speaking to us. Anastasiya Shapochkina, they're a Russia specialist and the president of Eastern Circles. Thank you.